Trump's lawyer in the DC case, one of his four indictments, and I want to take a moment to think about that for a second. The fact that I have to refer to the former president as the president with the four indictments, and you don't even know which one I'm talking about. In this case, I'm talking about the DC one, the January 6th inciting insurrection one. Well, his lawyer applied for an appeal on that case, but there was something wrong with the motion to appeal. That's a 3, 2, 1. So this is Ben Meisalas, and he's going to, from the Midas Touch, and he's going to go over what happened.
From the Midas Touch Network. So we know that Donald Trump filed a notice of appeal regarding the gag order imposed on him by federal judge Tanya Chutkan in the Washington, D.C. federal case. One problem, though, Donald Trump's lawyer, John Lauro, who filed the notice of appeal, is not a licensed lawyer to practice law before the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeal, where they filed a notice of appeal. That's right. It's now been uncovered that John Lauro, Donald Trump's lawyer, is not a member of the bar who's permitted to practice before the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. He has to submit an application. He is a licensed lawyer in other jurisdictions, but you have to be licensed as well to practice before the various courts of appeals throughout the United States.
So that is...
So, Duncan, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, you can.
Do you know which states you're allowed to practice your financial practice in? Do you know?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'm in 3 states.
Oh. And you know what? I actually happen to know which states I'm licensed to teach in. There are 2 of them.
Right.
And I know which ones they are even. And I actually happen to know that I'm not licensed to teach in the other ones.
That's true, yeah. So you can't do that in the other states. Yeah. Yeah, it's the same with attorneys. You have to pass the bar in each separate state or apply to get that waived. Usually they don't waive it. You have to take the bar, right?
It's just crazy to me that you would somehow not manage to know where you're licensed to practice.
You didn't know you weren't licensed to practice in DC? Yeah, no, it's just so stupid. His lawyers are just, oh.
I can almost see the reverse, like with certain types of license being I didn't realize I could practice in XYZ place because my license is held in some other place. But I've never heard of somebody thinking they're licensed to practice somewhere that they're not.
No, I know.
That's not a direction that I think that goes normally. It's super weird to me.
Right. Well, it's like trying to use Monopoly dollars at Caesar's Palace. It's just, the judge is just going to look at it and go, you're not even licensed in this state.
Right.
Oh, man. It just kills me. It just kills me. They're so... It's like they think nobody's going to check or something. I don't know what they think. But it gets worse for Trump going forward. And the case in Georgia really heated up starting Friday. And we're going to start with this clip from Ari Melbourne because people are starting to flip on Trump. And it's not looking good for him right now. It is looking really bad. We'll talk about that in a minute here.
Cases Jack Smith has already put pressure on defendant Trump after winning that partial gag order. Now, if you've been following the news at all here in America, you probably know that D.A. Willis has just won convictions on the eve of her first RICO trial. Indeed, that trial was supposed to start today, but she won it so decisively, there is no trial. I'll explain. 2 Trump lawyers pled guilty 2 days in a row to end just last week. Defendant Trump is showing new concern today that he is worried they will testify against him and it will be damaging. He's posted a new statement, which asserts, referring to Sidney Powell, that she was, quote, one of millions who thought the 2020 presidential election was rigged and stolen. That's his typo, by the way. He goes on to say, quote, Ms. Powell was not my attorney and never was. That claim is false, but it is also telling. And I'll show you exactly why. But here was then lead Trump attorney.
So here's the deal. So the first to flip on him was Sidney Powell, the woman in the middle here, right? Do you guys remember she's got that real deep Southern? She talks like this, really slow all the time. Yeah, she sounds like the woman telling an orphan, "You ain't never getting adopted." Right? She just sounds evil to me, like the villain from Little Orphan Annie. Anyways,
Right.
yeah, I know. She's just anyway. So she flipped first. She got a great deal. I think it was 5 or 6 years probation. They didn't charge her with any felonies. They knocked them all down to misdemeanors. Right? It's 5 year probation plus the misdemeanors. I think like a $5,000 fine, which is nothing. And she has to testify in all future cases. Right? Now, I mean, if you get a DUI, it's a worse sentence.
Right.
Yeah. So she was looking at several years of prison, and she got it pled down to no jail time, 5 years probation, fine, and you have to testify. And I think she has to write a letter of apology to the state of Georgia, something like that. But anyway, so I think she should have to go door to door like a sex offender and say, "Yeah, I tried to steal your vote." All right. But anyway, what kills me about this is so she got away with quite a bit, looking at prison time, got it down. She now still has a chance to potentially keep her bar license, which is kind of amazing.
Oh, wow.
I
Right.
don't know that she will, and I don't know who would hire her after this, but she could potentially get it back and get all that stuff expunged. So that was the first thing. So then Chesebro or Chesebro, he's Chesebro. His name's Chesebro.
Chesebro.
His name's Chesebro. He's from Wisconsin. His name is Chesebro. I don't care how he pronounces it. If you're from Wisconsin, you have that name, it's Chesebro. Anyway, so he comes in, he pleads, he gets one felony, but he gets the similar deal where he gets 5 years probation, a $5,000 fine, and he has to testify. Right? So we're gonna watch these real quick, but I want to clarify this because this is important. So when DAs get these sort of deals that they hand out like this, because these are small fish as far as Bonnie Willis is concerned. She doesn't want them. She wants Trump. She wants Rudy Giuliani. She wants the bigger fish, right? So there's 19.
Of course.
So there are 19 people that she indicted. It's not unthinkable that by the end, 18 of them will plead out and it'll just be Trump all by himself with 18 people having to testify against him. Right? But when you do these deals, they do what's called a proffer agreement. And the way a proffer agreement works is this, is Sidney Powell and Chesebro had to come in, and they probably did it on film. They usually do it, they tape it or they put it on film. Had to testify and answer questions to all the stuff they know, right? And once that was done, they have it and it's recorded and it's evidence now. It can be submitted as evidence, this testimony, the deposition, and the proffer agreement. Once they testified to all that, if the DA found that she thought they weren't lying and they were given everything they had, then the DA would sign the deal. But you don't get the deal until after you give everything up. So the other catch to that is this, is let's say they go to testify in Georgia, but they also, if Jack Smith calls them to testify in D.C., they have to go to D.C. and testify. If they get called to testify in Florida, they have to testify. And if they get caught withholding or lying about any information, they violate the probation, they violate the deal, and they instantly go back to Georgia and get sentenced and go to jail or go to prison because they're in violation of the probation.
Their hands got tied.
Yep. Well, that's if you're going to cut them a deal like that, because her and Chesebro are both looking at hard time, years in prison. They got off with a slap on the wrist, a $5,000 fine and probation.
Oh my goodness! I mean, they did get off with a slap on the wrist, but like, I guess my thoughts are, I'm just like, I hope they plan on walking the straight and narrow because
they're gonna have to, or they're gonna get hammered hard. So let's watch. So this was Sidney Powell flipping on Trump. This is when she pled guilty.
Well, this afternoon, former President Donald Trump is trying to distance himself from one of his former lawyers, Sidney Powell. Just last week, you might remember, she pleaded guilty in the case alleging a criminal conspiracy to try to overturn the 2020 election here in Georgia. Well, the former president posted on his social media, Truth Social, on Sunday saying Powell was not his attorney and never was. Mr. Trump said Powell, along with millions of other people, thought the 2020 presidential election was rigged and stolen. However, it's documented that Powell did serve as his attorney. Mr. Trump listed her as an addition to his legal team in 2020, saying she will work on the legal effort to defend elections. Of course, this is all coming just days after attorney Kenneth Chesebro and Powell pleaded guilty to reduce charges in exchange for their testimony.
So sorry, I misquoted that. So that wasn't her actually pleading. That was the after the fact. Trump tried to deny that she was his lawyer. Even though there's record of it, and he even said it.
It's like being like, I wasn't married to that woman.
Right.
No, I wasn't married to that woman. You're like, but there's like paperwork filed with the court.
Right.
Like you were clearly married to that woman. No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
No.
There's a marriage certificate.
No, I wasn't married to her. But like, this is your signature on the marriage certificate. Right. You clearly married her. Nope. Like, who do you think you're fooling, buddy? I mean,
oh, I know.
The evidence is there.
It's the old joke from Chicago where the woman comes home and finds her sleazy boyfriend in bed with two other women, right? And she wakes him up at gunpoint and she's yelling at him and he's like, what are you talking about, babe? I've just been here by myself the whole time. She's like, what are you talking about? You're by yourself. You're with two other women right now. He's like, what are you going to believe? Your eyes or what I tell you? Well, probably my eyes. So that was bad. So, I mean, he's screwed on that. No, this is Chesebro's deal. This is Alex Wagner talking about it on Friday.
Now, as former DeKalb County DA, Gwen Keyes. Gwen, it's great to see you tonight. Fortune has you in New York.
So they're going to talk a little bit about this and proffer and all that stuff, but they're going to talk about Chesebro flipping on it.
So we can dig into this explosive development, which seems meaningfully more perilous for Donald Trump than even maybe Sidney Powell or other flipped co-defendants, because he's implicated in the same plot that Chesebro is.
He is, and if you look at the indictment, the former president, Mr. Giuliani, Mr. Eastman are all listed in this count. This is count 15 of the original indictment. You notice with Ms. Powell, they created a separate accusation to present misdemeanors. This is a felony. It's in the original document, and it has several people named in the count as co-conspirators.
And the fact that, you know, when I heard Chesebro was pleading out, it was, my thoughts immediately turned to Giuliani, Eastman, and Trump, which is maybe why outside the court today, Chesebro's lawyer said he didn't snitch against anyone. He went in there, he accepted responsibility, almost telegraphing to potential other co-defendants, I didn't snitch. And yet he's going to be asked to snitch, isn't he?
Well, one of the conditions of this plea is that he made a proffer to the district attorney, and he has to testify against the other co-defendants. So we'll see what that testimony is. But certainly we've seen DA Willis. She's very smart. She's very strategic. I cannot imagine she has allowed him not to provide incriminating evidence against other defendants.
If you're Rudy Giuliani's lawyer right now, Rudy Giuliani, who has a hard time keeping lawyers, who is in financially dire straits, what would your advice to, I mean, is it a foregone conclusion that he's going to be under immense pressure to plead out himself?
I think you're going to start to see other defendants start to fall. Remember the progression here. Both Ms. Powell and Mr. Chesebro, they had motions in front of the court. Those motions did not go their way. And then you see within 5 or so days that they've made the decision that they don't want to risk going to trial and possibly have a felony conviction with jail time. I think you're going to see that with Mr. Giuliani and several of the other defendants as well.
So she points out a good point here that of what's going on. So there were a few people that were involved in that were like tight involved with this. It was Eastman and Giuliani, who were kind of at the top, right? And then Mark Meadows, right? And then Powell and Chesebro were two of the lawyers that were a part of all that, who were the smaller players, but they were a part of it with those three. And Jenna Ellis, who was the other attorney that was involved with that. So what she's pointing out is Fonnie Willis wants to get these lower ones off on really good deals, because especially now with Giuliani's broke. He can't afford to get huge fines or go to prison or anything like that. He'd probably die in prison at this point with the kind of charges he's looking at. So now it makes it more attractive. So the game now is, let's make a deal. So we've got pretty much the big fish riled up here all together. We got the smaller players in place. So now the dominoes are starting to fall. And now it's who can be the first to get a deal. Because once she has enough that she feels she can get a conviction, why is she going to offer you a good deal? She's going to say, bummer, take your chances at court. You waited too long. So now it's everybody's running to see who can rat first. And part of that was to go after Giuliani. But remember, it was Powell, Eastman, Chesebro, and Jenna Ellis were the four big ones, right? Well, guess who flipped this morning? Jenna Ellis.
Oh.
So
All right.
This morning in Georgia, another one of Donald Trump's co-defendants in the election interference case taking a plea deal. This is former Trump lawyer Jenna Ellis in court this hour.
Is it your decision to waive these rights and enter a guilty plea because you are in fact guilty?
It is. So she is the fourth co-defendant and the third in just a week to take a plea deal.
Hold on, pause. Why is she smiling in her mugshot? It's not smiling now. She cried in court today when she pled. She was crying through the whole hearing.
Joining us is NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett, and also with us by phone is MSNBC.
Oh, we'll cut that out. But the thing about that is, she was crying. She gave her little apology speech to the judge, which was actually fairly nice. And then she basically hugged her lawyer. You know why? Because she got 5 years probation, $5,000 fine, has to testify, could potentially still keep her bar license.
You know, I'm not surprised that she cried.
I cried too.
People for crying or whatever, but like, what could have happened is so extreme that it would completely change your whole world. And as it stands, if she really gets off like as lightly as this appears she could, there are things that are not great that are happening, but like nothing that's as detrimental as what could have been, you know?
Well, right.
I would have cried my brains out.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing about it is she's always going to have this stain on her, like the rest of them. They're always going to have this stain. You guys lied and tried to overthrow the election, and you knew it. You can't say you didn't know what you were doing. You tried to overthrow the country. And the bottom line is the fact that you're not the one that the DA really wants, right? Just means, well, in this case, the DA doesn't really want you. So instead of you doing 5 or 10 years in Fulton prison, right? Instead, you get 5 years probation.
Right, there's one option.
Right.
Option one, you know.
Yeah. Do you want to spend hard time in prison, or do you want to do 5 years probation? I guarantee you right now, nobody wants to go to prison. Not nobody, but yeah. So once again, that's the game now. Who can get a deal fast enough before the Georgia DA is not doing it? But even then, you got to remember, just because they got a deal from Fonnie Willis doesn't mean they'll necessarily get a deal on the DC case that these people are all involved in too. So they might get indicted or continue or have to go to trial in those cases. In which case, they should probably just plead out and get whatever deal they can get. But everything that Fani Willis has, all the proffer agreements, all the information, all the testimony she has from them in order to cut these deals, you know who else has them? The prosecutor in the DC case, Jack Smith. Because she's going to share all that evidence with him. Why wouldn't she? So Trump is really, and that case starts in March. Trump might not go to trial in Georgia till the end of next year, but the case in DC starts in March, and now Jack Smith has even more arrows in his quiver because Fani Willis basically nailed this thing shut for him. Not that he didn't probably already have it nailed shut, but still, now it's really nailed shut. But we'll move.